There are no official archival records of this letter. Not a single academic journal mentions it. Not a single major university quotes it. No footnotes in major biographies. Nothing in the extensive volumes of Carl Gustav Jung's collected works refers to it. There is an eerie silence surrounding this document, especially from those who have built their entire careers on the study and analysis of Jung's thought. The few who have come across references to it speak about it only in hushed tones, behind closed doors, in quiet circles, away from the rigidity of the scientific world. Because what's written in it is something the empirical mind struggles to digest. Something outside the bounds of accepted rationality, something that forces a confrontation with a truth many are not prepared to meet. Carl Gustav Jung, the founder of analytical psychology, the mind behind the concept of archetypes and the collective unconscious, a man deeply rooted in the scientific method and meticulous analysis, once died. Clinically, his heart stopped. In the spring of 1944, he suffered a massive heart attack. The hospital records show this clearly. He was unconscious for an extended period. For those few minutes, something occurred that didn't just resemble unconsciousness or delirium. Jung didn't just black out. He left. Something beyond description took hold. And when he returned, he wasn't quite the same man. What makes this particular incident even more fascinating is that Jung, who was extremely cautious with his words and the public image of his work, did write about what he experienced, but not in his published works, not in any journal entries intended for scholarly review. Instead, he wrote a personal letter addressed to someone referred to only as H, believed to be a Swiss colleague and fellow student of mysticism and depth psychology. The letter would remain hidden for decades in a private archive in Basel, reportedly kept in a sealed safe by the descendants of H. It was only decades later, when H's grandson entrusted a documentary filmmaker with a copy of it, that the contents surfaced, quietly, anonymously, without institutional endorsement. The letter begins with a calm yet staggering declaration: "I floated above the earth." Jung described looking down and seeing the world not as it appeared in maps or atlases, but as something almost symbolic, a sphere of soft light, blue like a dream but unmistakably the earth. "Time disappeared," he wrote. "So did pain, so did fear. There was no weight in my thoughts, only clarity. What I had called consciousness was only the shadow of what exists beyond." And here, Jung introduces an idea that is both beautiful and destabilizing, that what we consider to be our true self, our awareness, our waking mind, is merely a distorted reflection of something infinitely deeper. He saw, not with physical eyes, but with a kind of internal perception that transcended senses. The earth, he says, was distant, not just in space, but in reality. It was like seeing a photo of a place you once knew intimately, but no longer live in, a home you recognize but can no longer enter. Then, something or someone appeared. Jung calls it a being, but it defies description. It wasn't human, but it wasn't alien either. Not an angel, but not devoid of familiarity. Its presence was not threatening, he wrote. It did not speak in words, yet I understood all that it conveyed. It was like the warmth of 1,000 thoughts washing over me at once. The being conveyed a truth, not through language, but through pure transmission. I understood that life is not merely for the development of personality, but for the maturing of the soul. That death is not the end, but a gate, and what lies beyond that gate is not a void. What's astonishing is how Jung reacts. He doesn't revel in what he sees. He doesn't romanticize it. Instead, he writes with the tone of a man stunned by a truth too large to carry back with him. He says, "I did not want to return. I pleaded to remain, but the will was not mine to exert. Something, or someone, sent him back, and when he awoke, it was with a deep sense of loss. I felt the weight of the body again, the air, the voices of the doctors, and a profound ache, not in my chest but in my spirit, because I had seen something that cannot be unseen. Why didn't he speak of it publicly? Why was this experience kept in a sealed letter rather than in one of his many books on dreams, symbols, or the psyche? Jung answers this in the same letter. The world would not have understood. I would have been dismissed, perhaps diagnosed, perhaps disgraced. My work would have been buried under accusations of mysticism. But I was not mad. I had simply seen something real, too real to be accepted by a world built on reason alone. He admits he nearly destroyed the letter, that the impulse to burn it was strong, but something in him resisted. Instead, he entrusted it to H, with instructions that it not be shared until the world was ready to approach the threshold he had glimpsed. And according to the family of H, Jung wrote an additional note attached to the letter. Read this only when the fabric of reality begins to tear. Then it will make sense. The most haunting parts of the letter are the visions. He saw what he described as souls, not in the traditional sense of floating spirits, but as presences full of memory and identity. There were those I never met in life, and yet I knew them. I recognized one as my father, another I cannot explain, a child I never had, yet who felt like mine. Time did not flow linearly there. Thoughts were not bound by language. I remembered myself outside of biography, not who I was, but what I was. He writes of the space between the worlds, a phrase he never used in any of his official works. He says this space isn't a metaphor. It's a kind of transitional field, neither life nor death, but a membrane between the two. He describes it as silent, radiant, and deeply knowing. In that place, knowledge came without questions. It was like standing in sunlight and absorbing truths through the skin. And then came the vision of the future. Jung says he was permitted to see a sliver of what lies ahead, not in prophecy, but in essence. The line between worlds grows thin, he wrote. People will begin to feel and see more, but it will not be without danger. There is freedom in it, yes, but also chaos. The unprepared mind may collapse under it. Some will awaken, others will break. Jung recognized that the psychic walls separating inner and outer reality would one day begin to dissolve, that the inner vision of mystics, dreamers, and the psychologically attuned would no longer be rare, that humanity itself would undergo a transformation of perception. But such awakenings carry peril. To see too much too quickly is madness, he warns. To carry the full light without preparation is to burn. And then he writes something which remains one of the most profound statements in the letter. You will not be asked who you were when you arrive, but how you change to become uniquely you. It is not about status, accomplishment, or fame. It is about transformation, about how much of your original self you were able to awaken during your time on Earth. That is the true measure, the curriculum, so to speak, of this mysterious school called life. He describes near the end a singular vision given in response to a question he was allowed to ask. What is truth? He inquired in that place of clarity. The answer was not spoken but shown, a tree. Its roots extended into pure darkness, its trunk scarred with time and its crown ablaze with eternal light. Truth, he understood, is not knowledge. It is growth. It is transformation. It is the path through suffering into understanding. It is the union of shadow and light. The metaphor is stunning, that the roots of truth descend into the deepest night, and its crown touches fire, suggesting that truth is born from pain but culminates in enlightenment. Not the comfort of certainty, but the evolution of the soul itself. Have you ever really stopped and asked yourself who you are beneath it all? Not your name, your job, or the roles you play every day, but the real you. What remains when everything on the outside fades away? When the noise quiets, the masks fall off, and you're left with only your thoughts. What's left then? Carl Jung asked this same question, and he believed he found an answer. But the real question now is, are you ready to know what he discovered? After a powerful and deeply personal experience, something that forever changed him, Jung was never quite the same. He once wrote, "I came back, but a part of me stayed there." It wasn't just poetic language. He truly meant it. Sometimes in the middle of the night, he would feel something calling to him. It wasn't like a dream. It felt too real, like a voice carried by the wind, whispering just outside his window, soft but impossible to ignore. After that, Jung dove into the ancient world for answers. He searched through the Kabbalah, explored alchemical texts, and studied the secret teachings of ancient Greece. He wasn't just curious, he was looking for confirmation. The things he had seen or felt outside of his body seemed to match what those ancient traditions had been pointing toward for centuries. It was as if those old symbols and stories were maps of something very real, something beyond life as we know it. But here's what's even more intriguing. Jung didn't share everything. He hinted at something else he had encountered, a different kind of presence. He mentioned it only briefly, with care. "Not everything in the afterlife is light," he said. "Some beings are there not to welcome you, but to test you. You can't pass through unless you face something within yourself first, unless you've walked through your own inner door." He never used words like demon or evil. Jung chose his language carefully, but he did say something important. "I'm not a teacher. I'm a messenger standing at the edge." His tone was calm. It felt more like a gentle breath than a warning. "You've already heard it," he wrote. "It's clear and soft, like breathing, and if you don't turn away, you'll be guided. Don't be afraid." This isn't really about Jung anymore. It's about us. It's about those moments when something shakes your world, a loss, an illness, a strange dream that won't let go, or the eerie sense that someone's there even though you're alone. Those moments aren't accidents. Jung believed those are the invitations, the quiet openings, the beginning of a much deeper journey. It doesn't matter whether or not you believe in an afterlife. That's not the real question. The real question is, when something knocks at the door of your soul, will you answer? There was one final note Jung left behind, a separate slip of paper, small and nearly worn out. Just a few short lines. But somehow, they carried more weight than anything else he had written. "Knowledge is not truth. Truth is a meeting, a moment where all the roles fall away, where there's nothing to hide behind. Just you, as you really are." And now I ask you, not as a narrator but person to person, are you ready for that kind of meeting? After writing that letter, Jung never spoke of the experience again. He went back to his work, writing, helping others, guiding patients. But he knew the most important part of his story wasn't in any book. It wasn't on a page. It was written on the threshold between two worlds. Reading his words, it doesn't feel like he wrote them for a researcher or even for himself. It feels like he wrote them for you, like he somehow knew you'd find them. And when you do, a quiet but serious question begins to echo in your mind. What if it's true? What if there's only a thin, transparent veil separating this life from what we call death? And behind it, there's not darkness, but something so full of light, so overwhelmingly real, that you hesitate to look. Jung had seen it, but he never tried to convince anyone. He only ever said, Look for yourself. The path isn't in books, it's in experience. 80 years have passed since then, but ask yourself, has anything truly changed? Are we any less afraid of dying? Do we know ourselves any better? Or have we become even more lost, buried in our phones, in constant distractions, running faster and faster with no clear direction? Jung once warned, "There will come a time when the veil is lifted, and those who aren't ready will suffer, because the truth that sets you free burns first." He also wrote, "Once someone has seen their own soul, they can no longer lie to themselves." You might try to stay silent, you might hide, but deep down, something has been awakened, like a bell ringing far away, and once it starts, you can't unhear it. And now there's no more to say. The letter ends, but you still feel something, don't you? As if this is not the conclusion, but the very beginning. Because real discovery doesn't come from outside sources. It comes from within. All Jung did was open a door. The rest, that's your path to walk. If you've read this far, if something inside you stirred, if your heart beat just a little faster, then you've already taken your first step. It doesn't matter if you're young or old. It doesn't matter whether you're deeply spiritual, skeptical, or just curious. If you're searching, then you've already been called. Because this journey isn't about escaping death. It's about going beyond it. About truly meeting yourself. So now take a moment, close your eyes, don't be afraid, and ask yourself honestly, am I living the way I would live if I knew, without a doubt, that my soul is eternal? Maybe, just maybe, someone from the other side is watching you as you read this, quietly, waiting. And if this message touched you in some way, don't keep it to yourself. Share your thoughts, leave a comment, or simply leave a sign so others who feel the same know they're not alone. And if you want to keep going down this path, if something in you wants to keep exploring, then click like. Not just as a gesture, but as a sign that you heard something here, that you're listening, that you're ready. Until next time, may you always carry a light inside you that never fades.